Привет! После легализации азартных игр в Украине часто говорят о том, что к нам хотят выйти иностранные операторы, в том числе и в онлайн-сегмент. А насколько онлайн изменился за 2020 год? И действительно ли Украина настолько интересна иностранным операторам? На эти и другие вопросы сегодня в подкасте «Украинские реалии в гембле» отвечает Шахар Аттиас, эксперт в онлайн-гемблинге. С нами на связи из Тель-Авива. Шахар Аттиас много лет работал на руководящих должностях в игорных компаниях. Сейчас является основателем и генеральным директором ведущей консалтинговой компании в области онлайн-игр.
Many experts say that in 2020 online gaming
Games have got more development than operators have expected at the end of the last year. At the same time, many companies weren't ready to grow so fast. Yes? Can you tell us about the main problems which online operators from various countries have faced during this year? Can you tell us?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so 2020 obviously wasn't a regular year, right? I mean, everybody can notice that. We don't travel freely. We have a global pandemic, and it was a big impact on the entire way people handle themselves. The way the iGaming industry has experienced the coronavirus is actually divided into the type of work your company was doing in the industry. So if you were in sports, then you've experienced a very major stop. Many companies shut down their businesses because they had no activity anymore, and even those that remained active saw a very big decline in activity. If you were not working in online at all, but just offline, then obviously you experienced all the lockdowns and quarantines and the travel ban, so that had an impact as well. On the other hand, companies that had online casinos saw a huge increase in activity. I'm talking about companies that by July already saw triple numbers than what they had in February. Okay, so complete change of the entire perspective of how this company is operating. You were a company of 20 people used to a certain turnover, and within 3 to 4 months, suddenly you're still 20 people, but you have twice, 2.5, 3 times more turnover, and it had a huge surge on the income as well as on the workload. So many companies were looking to get additional resources. And speaking of resources, the development companies had, again, on one hand, they had less people in the office, so the efficiency dropped. But on the other hand, they had access to many more employees because they've changed the way they conduct business and started to hire people from home. So they had access to more development going on. All in all, I would say that the major impact was probably on the marketing side of the business. The operators themselves that saw the big increase in activity, which required more workload in terms of faster connections and access to more technical solutions. And they were looking for better platforms that could provide them with the solutions that they need for this bigger activity.
Okay. From the technical point of view, how should online operators change to continue their growth in 2021?
Very good question, because it's indeed, as I said, the world has changed. The world has moved on. So what I saw is that companies were looking to try to make sure that their players will not leave them. Okay, so if acquisition was the king prior to the pandemic, and you know that if you were spending so much money on advertising, you will get so many new registrations, and of them you will get new players and that. Suddenly, especially within regulated markets which are secluded, I mean, you cannot start working if you're working within a regulated market such as the UK. You cannot just decide that you take players from Poland or from Czech Republic. You're not allowed to, and that's how it works. So the fastest way and the most sensible way for you to grow your activity is by working better with your existing players. And as such, companies started to look into how to optimize their CRM, how to make sure that their players will be more engaged and will not leave them, increase their wallet share, meaning instead of playing with 5-6 different online gambling operators, which this is what players do. They play with competition all the time. Then try to convince them to dedicate more money out of their wallet share into their own activity. So in general, companies were developing very fascinating new functionalities such as real-time marketing automation. So if the concept previously was the player will play, and the next day we will be looking at what the player was doing, what can we do to improve, how can we win them back, what would be the engagement tool that we will use in order to make sure that next week we will see the player again. Again, this was before the pandemic. Now companies are starting to look at how we make sure that the player is happy right now when he's still playing. Okay, not to mention that the fact that in some countries such as Sweden, for example, you're not even allowed to communicate with players once they are not on your website. So they've developed tools that allow you to detect in real time the player activity, set triggers, launch pop-ups, provide bonuses, all the entire logic of a complete user journey, even before the player is leaving. So there are very, very interesting tools in this regard, which, I'm happy to talk about for many hours, but let's just say that if anybody is interested, then reach out to me and I will tell you, give you a brief of the landscape and who is doing what in this type of activity.
Okay, we already see that regulators impose various retraction actively, especially in marketing. The difficulties can iGaming face next year, and how can it slow down the growth speed?
Yes, the negative impact of one of the negative impacts of the coronavirus was that people were staying more at home. So some of them were playing more than they should have, which increased the number of problematic gambling. And governments and regulators across the world are trying to tackle that, and they are offering many different ways to, first of all, make sure that you are not working with players that you shouldn't be working, underage, problematic gamblers and such, and they enforce the operators to use many more restrictions and offer many more options for the players to stop playing. So on one hand, obviously, as a consultant that works with operators, this is in a way a step that is meant in order to decrease activity, and you are compliant to ask the players for their driving license and source of funds, which is very draconic requirement, but still it's becoming more and more popular. And in the UK, VIP programs now have to submit a name of a person, so you are individually in charge over the marketing to players. So the regulator can actually come and say, you specifically were not doing your job well, instead of just giving a fine to the operator. It's becoming more and more of an issue, but I can definitely appreciate and see the greater good by looking at adapting the top level perspective. They are trying to help people not to get into a problem that is very difficult to get out of. And if that's what us as operators have to do in order to support this cause, then this is what we will do. It is a problem, and nobody wants to work with a player that gambles too much. Okay, I like to think about it as if somebody at the beginning of the month is saying, I'm going to spend 50 euros on cinema and 200 euros on restaurants and 300 euros on online gambling, then that's what I want. I don't want 301. I want the 300 to be spent at my website. But that's it. I don't want more than that. So instead of increasing player value, we need to look at increasing wallet share. So just to make sure that we take the most percentage out of these 300, that this is what the player would like to spend on online gaming.
Mm-hmm. Recently, the Ukrainian government has legalized gambling, include the online sector. Yeah. According to the prognosis, by the end of this year or the beginning of the next year, the process of local license issuing will start. How interesting is the Ukrainian market for international operators right now, and what attracts them specifically?
Very interesting. The bottom line is very, very interesting. It's first of all, I love the Ukraine. Kyiv is the city I've been to outside of Israel. It's the city I've been to the most. I've been many, many times. I have very good friends, and I love the Ukrainian people. So, but on top of that, the Ukrainian market is very much interesting. It's a big country. It's bigger than Canada, bigger than Poland. It's roughly the same size as Argentina, Spain, Colombia. All of these are very interesting markets globally. Some of them are regulated, providing a lot of money for the operators. So it's very interesting. The culture, there is very much a sports betting culture. I mean, try to speak with an Ukrainian about the wrong football team, and you're going to end up losing a lot of money. So the culture is very much pro betting, and you just need to walk the streets in order to see that. And it's an advanced country in terms of technology. I mean, it's by far easier to process transactions in a place such as Kyiv versus larger cities in South America. I mean, you would have more Apple Watch transactions in the Ukraine than you would have in many other countries. Everybody would do this and that. So so the technology is there, the culture is there, the size is there, and not to mention that gambling companies were operating in the Ukraine even before the regulation, so we know exactly what size is the average player and how much money they spend on gambling. It's a very good market. I'm very excited about it.
Thank you. How much money the entering of the Ukrainian market cost? What period is required to recover the expenses?
Mhm. So the license itself is to obtain the license is quite costly. It's about $1 million for a sport betting license. That's not a small amount. It's not huge amount by comparison to the US, but then again the Ukrainian is a smaller market. So the license itself costs a lot of money, but more than that, in order to work properly in the Ukraine, you will have to beat all the existing large operators that are already working. Parimatch, EvoPlay, Pinup, all of these brands exist. They work. They accept money from Ukrainian players. In order to make sure that your advertising will beat theirs, then you will need to spend a lot more. I would say that if you don't have $5-7 million to invest in the first year and a half, do yourself a favor and don't go into the market. You will need to work hard. I think it's going to be worth it, but you will need to work hard.
There are some rumors that, for example, PokerStars is interested in the Ukrainian market. What is necessary for Ukrainian to appear in the development strategies of large-scale operators in the next few years?
Very good question, because this is something that we've been talking about in the industry all the time. I would say that the one thing, the government needs to do two things in order to support, to attract large-scale operators. One, they've already done, which is providing a fixed structure for legalized online gambling with known rules, and everything is clear and straightforward, and that's excellent. The second is stability. Okay, if you look at the Swedish market, it seems as if all they're doing is trying to make sure that the operators are regretting the second they've started to work with them. It's every other month there are fines and there are prosecutions, and they remove the license and you need to take them to court, and they have additional terms and conditions that nobody even knew that exist. Stability. If you want to change something, just announce it, open it for discussion, ask the operators that already have the license, reach an agreement, and apply it in several months and not retroactively. Okay, so stability is very, very much important, and it will allow the larger companies to base their strategy going forward.
Ukraine has its specialist IT that create products for the iGaming sector of the other countries. In your opinion, will Ukraine be able to succeed in the development of gambling games for the sector? That is necessary for this?
Well, first of all, I haven't seen a challenge that Ukrainians cannot meet. So yes, they will be successful. But yes, Ukraine, obviously everybody knows that that Kiev and I think also in Odessa and in other places, it's hubs for outsourcing of development, and especially in iGaming, everybody knows the qualities of the Ukrainian developers. The question I think that should be asked is not if they are good enough, they are. It's how they are going to be guided, and to me this comes to the challenges that marketing is facing. For example, what I've said earlier about real-time marketing automation, about being able to make a product that is different from what everybody else. If you go to most of the online casinos, you will see exactly the same. One will have penguins and one will have sombreros, but it will be the same. Effectively, it's the same casino all across. So something that needs to be different, refresh, innovative. So the developers, yes, they will do whatever task you will give them to do, and it probably will do it, correctly and within time and everything. You need to come up with new concepts, with how to revolutionize the same product everybody's been using for such a long time.
It was my last question, and Shahar, thank you for interesting conversation, and have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here, and до свидания.
До свидания. Профессиональный диалог об игорном бизнесе продолжается. Если вы эксперт в гемблинге, приходите к нам. Но с цифрами, фактами, качественной экспертизой и нетривиальными историями. Также не забывайте выражать нам свою симпатию, задавать вопросы и смотреть следующие выпуски подкаста «Украинские реалии в гембле». До новых встреч!